For centuries, Britain projected power across continents not only through its navy or armies, but through something far quieter, more strategic, and far more profitable: corporations, private companies, backed by royal charters and protected by the British state. Built networks that stretched from India to Canada, from Africa to the Pacific, and across the world's oceans. These companies were not like today's multinationals. They minted their own currency, raised armies, negotiated treaties, captured entire regions, and influenced governments. In many ways, they operated like private states, so powerful that even the British government sometimes struggled to control them. This is the hidden story of how British corporations quietly ran half the world, shaping global trade, wealth, and geopolitics in ways that still echo through the modern economic system. Welcome to British Economic Archives. If you love uncovering the financial stories behind empires, nations, and forgotten economic systems, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because today's journey reveals how corporate power shaped the world more than most people ever realized. The most famous example is the East India Company, founded in 1600 and often described by historians as the world's first true multinational corporation. But calling it a corporation barely captures its scale. With a private army of over 250,000 soldiers by the 1800s, larger than many European states, the company controlled vast territories across India and South Asia. It collected taxes, built courts, enforced laws, and negotiated with kings. It created huge trading networks for textiles, tea, salt, and opium. It even ran its own naval fleet. According to the British Library, at its height, the East India Company was responsible for over half of global trade. Its influence was so large that a single corporate decision, like raising taxes in Bengal, could trigger famine, conflict, or economic collapse. The company's reach wasn't just commercial, it was political. It influenced parliament, shaped foreign policy, and helped build Britain's imperial wealth. When the Indian Rebellion of 1857 erupted, the British Crown finally took direct control, dissolving the company. But by then, it had already reshaped the economic map of Asia. The East India Company was only one piece of the story. Across the Atlantic, the Hudson's Bay Company, established in 1670, became another corporate empire, controlling vast territories across what is now Canada. With exclusive rights granted by the Crown, it governed an area known as Rupert's Land, stretching millions of square kilometers. It issued trade licenses, controlled local economies, and shaped indigenous relations through the fur trade. The company effectively ruled this territory for 2 centuries, building forts, trading posts, and systems of governance. It exercised judicial, commercial, and political power long before any Canadian government existed. The National Archives note that at the height of its influence, the Hudson's Bay Company was one of the largest landowners in history. It eventually sold Rupert's Land to the Canadian government in 1869. But its corporate legacy, global supply chains, resource extraction models, and long-distance trade became a blueprint for future multinationals. On the African continent, British corporate influence was equally powerful. Companies such as the Royal African Company, chartered in the 1600s, became key players in Atlantic trade. While its history is dark, deeply connected to the slave trade, its financial and political influence was enormous. Later, in the late 19th century, corporations like the British South Africa Company, founded by Cecil Rhodes and granted a royal charter in 1889, acted as corporate governments across southern Africa. The company administered areas that would become Zimbabwe and Zambia, issuing land rights, raising police forces, establishing trade routes, and setting tax systems. According to the British Library and Oxford Academic Studies, these corporations operated with powers that no private business today could legally possess. They blurred the line between private enterprise and colonial government, creating a hybrid corporate imperial model that allowed Britain to expand rapidly without directly funding territorial administration. Corporate dominance was not limited to land. It extended deep into natural resources, especially oil. In 1908, a major discovery in Persia led to the creation of the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, the precursor to today's BP. This company became strategically vital to Britain. The Admiralty under Winston Churchill invested directly, ensuring Britain would control its oil supply as it transitioned its navy from coal to petroleum. This move demonstrates how corporate power and national power became intertwined. British energy strategy, foreign policy decisions, and even military planning were influenced by the financial and geopolitical interests of a single corporation. Throughout the early 20th century, Anglo-Persian shaped Middle Eastern economic structures, influenced regional politics, and built the foundation for modern global oil markets. Its transformation into BP after World War II symbolized how British corporate influence adapted to new global realities while maintaining enormous economic reach. Another lesser-known but crucial corporate network was Britain's imperial banking system. Banks such as HSBC, Chartered Bank of India, Australia and China, now Standard Chartered, and Barclays DCO built financial pathways that linked London with Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and the Caribbean. These banks financed trade, infrastructure, mining, and administration. They issued currency in colonies, underwrote government loans, and facilitated the movement of capital across continents. Researchers from the London School of Economics note that by the early 1900s, more than half the world's international financial flows moved through London. Much of this was made possible because British corporations created a global financial architecture. They provided credit, insurance, accounting standards, and financial instruments that allowed trade to expand at unprecedented speed. These banks were not merely observers of empire, they were engines of empire, quietly shaping global commerce from behind the scenes. Even industries that seem relatively ordinary today, such as shipping and telecommunications, played enormous roles in Britain's corporate control of global trade. Companies like the Peninsular and Oriental Steam Navigation Company (P&O) established shipping routes connecting Britain to India, East Asia, and Australia. Their fleets carried mail, passengers, and cargo across imperial lines, creating logistical networks that enabled Britain to coordinate trade and military movement on a global scale. Meanwhile, Eastern Telegraph Company built one of the world's largest submarine cable networks, wiring continents together for the first time. According to the British Communications Archive, by the late 19th century, Britain controlled nearly 70% of global telegraph traffic. Corporate management of information allowed Britain to move financial and military intelligence faster than any rival power, giving it a strategic advantage that endured well into the 20th century. What made these corporations so influential was not just wealth or military power, it was the legal structure that Britain pioneered. Through royal charters, limited liability, and joint stock models, Britain built a system that allowed enormous pools of private capital to fund global ventures with limited risk. Investors in London could finance an expedition in India or a mining project in Africa without ever leaving Britain. At the same time, charters granted corporations government-like authority, allowing them to negotiate treaties, maintain armies, levy taxes, and administer justice. The combination of corporate finance and imperial authority created a structure unlike anything the world had ever seen. It allowed Britain to expand geographically without the direct costs of traditional empire building. In many ways, corporations became the backbone of British imperial strategy, enabling the Crown to project economic and political influence with extraordinary efficiency. The legacy of these corporations is still visible today. Many modern countries emerged from territories once governed, managed, or shaped by British companies. India's administrative systems, Canada's territorial boundaries, Middle Eastern energy industries, African mining economies, and global financial markets all carry marks of British corporate influence. Global maritime law, insurance standards, accounting practices, and trade systems were built around British corporate models. Even the modern multinational corporation shareholders, boards, limited liability protections, has deep roots in systems Britain developed during its imperial era. Historians frequently point out that while countries often decolonized politically, many remained economically structured around corporate systems created by British companies. These structures influence everything from supply chains to financial flows to legal frameworks. Today, British corporations no longer run half the world, but their legacy continues to shape global capitalism. The influence they built through trade, finance, and administration transformed the world's economic architecture. Understanding this history is not simply about empire, it is about how corporations gained power, how they shaped modern globalization, and how economic systems developed over centuries. Thank you for watching this deep dive into how British corporations quietly ran half the world. If you found this video engaging and eye-opening, please like, share, and subscribe to British Economic Archives. Your support helps us uncover more hidden stories behind the financial and economic forces that shaped Britain and the world. Leave a comment below with the next topic you want us to explore. There are many more untold chapters in the history of money, power, and empire.